In this episode, we dive deep into low-end theory. The booming sound of the 808 has completely flipped pop music culture, and classic bass lines got replaced with heavily gliding subs that go hand in hand with the kick drum. In both regards, the expansion Young Phantom, London Grid, and Lockdown Grind turned out to be a real treasure. And today I'm going to be using them to create a sinister and hard-hitting drill beat. To kick it off and get something going quickly, I opened up Young Phantom and went straight to the loops category over here in the browser. Using a computer keyboard, you can multi-select a couple of tags here in the browser. This is something that's not possible on the controller, but holding down the command key and selecting one of these tags will actually create a multi-selection, which is referenced in the result list below. So let's listen to a couple of these loops. They're ranging from like these atmospheric reversed piano loops over to trippy chords and very, very interesting textures all over. Oh, I like that high-pitched thing at the end of the bar. Yeah, here's some more keys, and the keys 140B nylon. This is actually the one that stuck with me, and I decided to take this as the main loop of my beat. I dragged it over to the pattern sequencer and started to build my intro. In order to make this loop even more dark and spooky, I decided to go to the group bus and load one of these Perform Effects modules in the tremolo setting. You will hear that once I'm activating this, the loop starts fluttering a little more. You can use this knob here to tweak the tempo and go into some really funky territory, but I left it and dialed it in at 10% to just add this kind of vinyl or tape flutter. Then I went into Lockdown Grind and picked a couple of one-shot samples from the library. That scratch window sound is giving us a little bit of rhythmical content. And then there's this whole group of one-shot samples, the Laserbeard, Click Section, Buzz Loki, and Glass Estate, which combined culminate in this kind of crash sound with even a little bit of glass being destroyed. This is also the perfect time to bring in the producer tags. Alright, that's all we need, but instead of dropping right into the beat, I decided to add a little bridge beforehand, which only is like 2 bars long, and it acts as a kind of riser before the actual beat drops. Let's listen to this quickly. Adios. And I created this by using the Rise Yachts 1 sample from the London Grid expansion, and in order to accomplish this hard cut at around bar 4 here, I went into the sampler settings, and instead of using the one-shot mode, I activated the ADSR mode, which means that a whole envelope is now controlling the behavior of the triggered sample. If I bring release and decay down to very low values like 50 milliseconds, there is no tail at the end of this. It's just going to create a very hard stop at the end. Adios. This small section also contains the first couple of 808 glides to set the tone, as well as a custom voice sample that says adios at the end of bar number 4, which is from a friend's voice memo, and I just cut it out and pasted it in here. And I just realized that there are actually more sounds in this section. There's this one-shot sample called SFX Glitch Coast from Burn Hughes, which gives the section a little bit of a rhythmic texture similar to a shaker. And as a little secret, on the first beat of the bar, you can hear this kind of turntable stop effect created with the drum kit, which is going to be introduced in the A part. So let's move over. And let's stop this for a second to be able to dissect this a little closer. The first thing that I want to talk about is the Cribs kit coming from Lockdown Grind. As opposed to my usual habits, I didn't record or play a pattern by myself, but instead I loaded that group with all of its included patterns. And all of them show up in the ideas view directly. And you can start auditioning all of these patterns to get a little bit of an idea of what drill beats sound like. Very rapid hi-hats. Also, some of these hi-hats carry some stereo spread left to right, so they stick out very nicely. There's just so much going on. And the Cribs kit gives you the building blocks for your track. I would just go through these patterns, select a couple of ones that I liked, and I ended up using pattern 3 for my A part. Cool, let's bring back the 808. And these are coming from the Reeks kit, also from the Lockdown Grind expansion. And this kit is so useful in many different ways because it includes 16 different 808 tones, all collected in one group. Some of these bass samples are hosted inside of a sampler, so you can play them chromatically using keyboard mode. Including the typical glide, because it has already been set up for you. If you go over here, all of these sounds are set to legato with a little bit of glide. So if you trigger one pad while you still hold another one, it creates an automatic glide to that note. The special thing about this is that each of these bass tones comes with its own individual pattern inside of the group. So make sure to load them with patterns. All of those will show up in the ideas view. And similar to the Cribs kit, you can now start auditioning the different bass lines. Let's bring in a little bit of the drum kit as well. Ooh, I like that one as well. Stank face all over. But wait, there is more. Whenever you have these 808 melodies like this one here played by a sampler, you can actually start swapping notes with other 808s here in the same group. Let's listen to this quickly. And move it down to bass frets 4. Great, that worked well. Let's take these other 3 notes and put them down to number 9. And with just a couple of mouse clicks, I created a combination of 3 different 808 tones interacting with each other. Let's go back to pattern 1, which is the one I use in the track. One more thing I'd like to point out here is the importance of drum tuning. Although I'm loading groups with patterns directly from the library, once I have my track going on, I go in and listen closely and check the drum tuning of all the sounds in the kit here. Some of you might wonder, wait a second, drum tuning? Yes, drum sounds have a pitch or a tune that can be perceived. Let's solo the snare drum quickly. And here in this example, I pitched the snare down by 2 semitones because this is where I felt it's locking into the harmonic content of the rest. I would highly recommend to pitch the sound that you want to tune up by 1 octave, like this here. This brings all the frequencies into a higher spectrum, and this makes it a little easier to pick it up with your ear. And mostly I find that once I'm doing this, the drums are really coming through with a perceived pitch that I can hear. I can almost sing it. Hang, hang. Something like this. And from here, I start tweaking just by small increments until I find a place where it locks, which was here at plus 10 semitones. And in order to reverse my transposition, I bring it back by 1 octave down to -2. And also, I think I did this to the kick drum. Yeah, the kick drum is 2 semitones up. Whatever is going on in your track harmonically and melodically is also changing the way you perceive the drum sound. So please take a couple of moments and see if another tuning hits the spot a little better. And you can also save a lot of EQing and plugins in general if you hit the right tuning right away. Now, let's move over to the B part, which sounds like this. What I wanted to do is create that typical half-time feel where you hear the main melody being dropped down by 1 or 2 octaves and maybe even going into some kind of slow motion feel. I achieved this by copying the main loop down here to sound number 2, and instead of using the initial pitch from plus 12 semitones, I brought it down to minus 12 semitones to this kind of deep timbre. Additionally, I changed the length to 64 bars as opposed to the initial 32 bars, so this stretches out the whole sample and is also now changing the melody inside of that 2-bar loop. I didn't stop here. I started to add additional plugins. A bunch of them, to be honest. Here there is an EQ taking off all the low frequencies, because through that process of pitching down a melody, it can happen that you create a lot of low frequencies which then fight against your bass line. So I didn't want this to happen and cut out all the bass by almost 20 dB below 300 Hertz, which is quite high in terms of threshold here. So there is another more aggressive effect called the FM, the frequency modulator. And this brings in this harsh, almost insect-like tone. I will move over to the dry setting so you can hear the initial sample. And once I bring this in, you can hear these overtones that are appearing from the signal. Almost like a swarm of bees or bugs or something like that, which fly around the room. I found that very, very interesting, and I even exaggerated it more by using a saturator on top, just driving the whole content of that sound a little more. And even a compressor, which I sidechain to the Reeks kit containing the 808. So every time an 808 comes in, the insect sound is going to be ducked. Check this out. And between these 808 glides, the insects come back in, which creates this very nice feeling through the B part. Another element which is super important in the B part is a loop coming from the pure drip expansion called Keys 135 C minor Bosnia, and it sounds like this here. It's a little bell or a glockenspiel which plays this sweet melody. And I started first by chopping it up. I went into the slicer and split the whole sample into equal parts of 8 slices. Once this is done, you can take this little arrow over here and drag and drop it to any other kind of sound. Now I can play all the chops from the pads and also start tweaking the chops even further. What I did in this track is bringing down the whole sample by 20 semitones, so it's super low. Then reversing it so it plays from the back to the beginning. The last tweak that I want to do is change the start point so the sample doesn't play from the very end, but instead it will allow me to go in the middle of the sample and drop in. And have all these beautiful reverse chords that I used to pimp the main melody even further. It's 3 chops down here, playing mostly quarter notes. And they melt into the main loop with all of these insects. Of course, when I bring in the bass line, the 808s is gonna duck the whole group. So the mix is gonna stay tight. Again, I have some effects here on top. Which brighten up the keys loop so it cuts a little bit better through the mix. Some reverb, lo-fi effect, and a saturator in moderate settings. That's all we need. Let me show you the last remaining scenes in my Ideas View, which is bridge number 2. Adios. Similar to bridge number 1 with that riser sound, but adios. Additionally, there is this halftime chords coming from the keys nylon loop. To add a little bit of variation before we enter the C part. Here the drum kit is playing another pattern. It's pattern number 4. Let's take a look at this. There is not that much hi-hats going on, just for you to compare. Here's pattern number 3. Lots of hi-hats, rattling on top. So for the C part, I decided to roll with pattern number 4. Less movement in the hi-hats, calms everything down. Excellent. This is all I'm gonna need to move over to the timeline and start arranging my track. The Maschine software makes it really easy to arrange all of these ideas onto a timeline. You open up the arranger view, and by right-clicking the header on top, you start inserting all the scenes that you've created beforehand. So I can bring in my intro and bring in my bridge, followed by, let's say, the A part, which I'm going to extend with these handles and drag it to 16 bars. Right, very easy. So again, right click, bring in the B part for another 16 bars. Can spit some lyrics on top of that, followed by bridge number 2. Which brings us back home to the A part, and I'm also gonna try to extend it a little more. But for now, this is pretty much resembling my arrangement, and I can right away listen to it. The intro with the producer tag. Bringing us to the bridge. And the A part. Love it. Love it. It's time to drive it home. I'm going to record that track into a sound file rather than exporting it out, because I think it adds that little random extra to it that is hard to recreate, and especially when I talk about drum mutes and turntable stops, I'm just feeling good rolling along with the track and adding them whenever I feel the time is right. So I will set up a group which I call recorder. Gonna color it in red and just for safety reasons mute it right away. Down here, select the sampler, and already I see that the detect mode is selected, which is great. Threshold very low, so it starts recording whenever I hit play, and that's all I need for now. Hit start. Machine is waiting for an input, and I'm gonna restart and hit play. So while that track is playing, I'm gonna listen closely, go with the flow, adios, and then from time to time mute the drum kit, the Crips kit, like this. Just these little dips where the drums are muted is making it easier also for the lyrics to lock into the track later on. Let's add a couple of turntable stops. Move over to this group over here and bring it back after a short stop. Also combine these two things and stop. Adios. Cool. We're approaching the end of that track. So what about muting these hi-hats? So the track is calming down a little bit. Quickly move over to the recorder, hit stop, and there it is. My whole track in one sound file. I can review it right away or hit the context menu and save the track on my hard disk. Now, this workflow, I tell you, it allows me to stay flexible with all my arrangement ideas, although I'm using the timeline and a very rigid framework of scenes and sections. It just opens up that little space where something unexpected can happen. So hopefully this gave you a lot of inspiration to work on your own 808 heavy tracks. You can find all the expansions I used in today's tutorial in the description below. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.